All right.
Hey.
That's the fastest we ever connected. All right. You can hear me?
Yes.
All right.
Can
Welcome, everyone, to episode 11 of Truth Hour. Thank you. Thank you. As always, please drop your questions and comments in the chat so that you can be a part of the conversation.
Yes.
So we're obviously we know we got an hour of politics packed, but we wanted to get into something a little bit kind of off politics and a little pop culture. And I'm not sure if folks have been keeping up with 50 Cent, Ice Cube, music, entertainment related news, but I, for one, am not happy with those two individuals. I got absolutely no respect for 50 Cent after his gross. I'm endorsing Donald Trump because Biden's going to raise my taxes too much, but I have different views on Ice Cube, and I was curious what your thoughts were before we get started. What were your thoughts were on Ice Cube and 50 Cent and the recent Trump supporting revelations?
Honestly, this is my thing. If you wanted to go and have conversations with the current administration outside of the election year, especially 2 weeks before the election or 3 weeks before the election, if they did meet with him last week or what have you, then I really wouldn't see that. That would be different. I mean, yeah, it's just the optics look bad, and I just don't understand. Like, when you've had an opportunity, if in fact you really are trying to work with the current administration and you're trying to bring more jobs or opportunities to Black and brown people in your communities, if you mean that, this would have been a conversation you would have had long ago, not now. I mean, there's been plenty of opportunities for them to sit down with the White House officials or even different agencies or congressional members. And so to me it's very selfish. It's so disrespectful to the community, and I don't support it. And
yeah, I mean, sorry. No, I was gonna say
no.
50 Cent's a clown to me, but Ice Cube, you made the point was perfect. This idea that Trump hasn't been in office for a few weeks. The dude's been in office now for 4 years. And
Right.
So I don't understand how Ice Cube doesn't recognize that he's really just a prop for the Trump campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Because if the goal was legitimately to help bring jobs to Black community, Trump had 4 years to do that. But now he's alleging he's going to do it so that he can say, oh, you know what? Look at my African American, right? Like, that's what he's doing with Ice Cube. That's what Ice Cube is now, his African American, as he loves to say at his foolish rallies, right? Look at my rapping African American. That's who you, Ice Cube. So I'm not going to call him a Tom, but I'm not going to not call him a Tom because he doesn't realize who and what he's working with. He just got played, and it's embarrassing because these are people that the Black community has supported for a very long time. And essentially, it almost feels like they've turned their backs on. But that's really all I got to say about that.
Yeah. And I guess the only thing I want to add in is that I'm definitely not saying that I'm anti-celebrities, entertainers, like people who have like greater influence. I'm not saying that I do not agree with them taking meetings with politicians, but it's just the nature of how this was done and then the timing. I absolutely do not support the Kardashian family, and I have a few reasons for that. But I mean, even with Kim Kardashian, the way that she has gone about really taking on the issue of criminal justice reform, there's a few arguments that can be made there. But again, you don't see her during this election cycle. She didn't show up to the convention. She didn't show up to either convention on anyone's tapes, like endorsing any candidate. She really is just stuck to the one issue that she supposedly cares about is criminal justice reform, making sure they're able to. She's helping people that have life sentences put on them with lesser. I mean, it's a few different things, but the problem I mean, the thing is that it's different with Kim Kardashian because she's not at the forefront saying I'm getting behind Donald Trump. And it's just like, it's so timely. It's so timely because rappers, they do have influence, especially Black men are known not to show up during election cycles and vote.
Yep.
And so for them, like two Black men that are well respected in the community, it's not good. It's not good at all.
I'm not going to say the name of Kim Kardashian's husband. He will not.
Yeah.
I will not speak his name. So we're just going to move on
Mm-hmm.
and look at key ballot measures across the country. I'm in California, so I'm going to talk about a couple of those, but also look at one in Arizona that those voters be trying to legalize marijuana. We got one in Florida. We got a major one in Oregon. So we'll break those down. Where should we start?
Right.
What do you want to hear first?
Well, why don't we start in California because that's where you are.
All right. So one of the propositions that's important to me, they all are important to me, but one of the two most important to me is Proposition 18. And Prop 18 would allow 17-year-olds to register and vote in primary elections if they turn 18 by the time of the general election in November.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that just seems like a no-brainer. If you're old enough to vote by the actual election, why would you restrict access to the ballot before then? I don't understand. Like primary elections hold, less weight than the general, but also the primary elections determine who gets to participate in the general. But if all of this is building towards the general and you're going to be old enough to vote in the general, I don't understand why we've up to this point, and who knows how this proposition on the ballot is going to turn out here, but I don't understand why we would have restricted access to 17-year-olds till the year 2020.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense, but part of it is the same. Not even offering a provisional ballot, right? So for people that are less familiar with some of the different voting laws, so say for instance, which I know a few people, they missed the deadline to vote in the current election that takes place in 2 weeks from today. Mm-hmm. And so in some states, they still allow same-day voter registration, but what will happen is you'll have a provisional ballot. And oftentimes what happens is that the provisional ballots, they are not always added in, like they might not make as big of an impact unless we have to do a recount on votes. And so in terms of somebody that turns 18 within the time frame of being able to register to vote. So say, for instance, I'll just use California as an example because the deadline to register to vote in California was this past Monday on the 19th. So if a 17-year-old, they actually turn they turn 18 tomorrow, but the election's not until the 3rd, they should in fact be able to register to vote. And I think what this calls is for reform of our systems and structures with voting, because after talking to a few people, they went in the system, and I get it, and I'm not trying to harp on the mail system, but it's also, this is what I'm saying, like in terms of structures that need to be reformed, is that these offices are inundated with so many registration, like requests, like people turning in applications to be able to register to vote, and the information hasn't been input in the system in a timely manner. So some people, when they went to check close to the deadline, they saw that they were not listed in the system. So they think, they're not going to be able to vote. But in fact, if you actually go and check your voter registration status, you might find that your information is in the system, so you are eligible to vote. And so I would say that people should definitely vote yes for that proposition, because there's no reason that someone that's turning 18 within the window of being able to vote, like within a voting year, they should be able to vote. And they shouldn't even be offered
by election day, not the voting day.
Sorry. But I'm saying like an election year.
Yeah.
Yeah, in that election year. What you're saying. By November.
Or hell, a year earlier. You could be able to register. You should be able to register a year earlier if you're going to be eligible to vote by election day. It doesn't make sense. But that proposition in particular made me think about this question: what should the voting age be? And I know I have my thoughts on this, and I've been very adamant for the past several years that the voting age should be 16. Why do you have to wait until you're 18 to vote? The best argument I've heard against allowing 16-year-olds to vote is this: they're not sufficiently informed on the issues to cast a ballot that is reflective of the knowledge that a voter should have. What?
But I've met older people that are less informed, and yet they're still able to vote, but a 16-year-old can't vote. And and my thing is, and I'm not saying this as being an ageist or anything like that, but a 16-year-old in today's current climate, a 16-year-old will go and do the research above somebody. I mean, they have more, they're more resourceful to go and find the information than I would say somebody over the age of 60.
Yeah.
That's bottom line. And things have definitely changed. Yeah. And things have definitely changed in terms of there's more access to a lot of information. So yeah, honestly, these things need to be changed to reflect the time that we're in.
I wonder if my sensitivity to this issue is related to my profession. I work with teenagers on a daily basis as a teacher. And so I recognize not just how hard they work in their studies, but I recognize how well informed they actually are. Now, are there bad students? Sure. But are there bad
adults?
Everything, right? In any industry. I was aren't there bad bus drivers? Aren't there bad pilots, right? I hope they're not bad pilots, but aren't there bad, there's bad in every profession. I will be on a plane soon, so let's hope there's not bad pilots.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's not.
So I've taught now in 5 states. I'm not going to go through the list, but so in some states, students take what's called a civics and economics class. Sometimes they break civics into a semester and econ's a semester. Sometimes they'll cram it into one semester. You're going through, that's a sophomore class typically. Sometimes you take it as an 11th grader. Kids also take U.S. history as a requirement across the country. I hope at least in every state that I can only speak to where I've taught, but in the states that I've taught, U.S. is required, and an element of that is an acknowledgement of the Constitution and how it structures our government and all of that. Basically, I say all this. I'm not going to give a big background, but I say all that to say I've never, right, in my long 35 years on this planet, I've never met a teenager that was not informed on the issues. However, I've met a bunch of peers and people older than me that if you ask them a question, it's like you could ask them, can you name both of your states, U.S. state senators?
Right.
And they're going to look at you like, oh, it was, didn't that one get reelected? That one? Which one? Which one?
Right.
Which one got reelected?
I mean, or it's
kids know.
Yeah. Or it's as simple as how many senators does each state have? Are they allowed? Guarantee the 17-year-old, 16-year-old, they would answer that question with ease in comparison to somebody over the age of 50. What happened? I'm
going to respond to this comment. So we got a comment on Instagram. It says, I would argue 17 just because most people learn about government in senior year. That is in some states if you're waiting to take an AP government class as a senior. But like I mentioned, I mean, when I taught in North Carolina for 2 years, I taught civics. That was a sophomore class. So it's not the same everywhere.
Yeah.
And those kids are 15.
Right. And the other thing, too, is that it depends the type of school, right? So the requirements are different. So, I know Cliff, you taught at K-12s, but maybe at a different type of a different school, I don't know all the terms, but a different public school, the requirements are a little bit different. Because I went to college with some people where their history was mainly the state history, where they had to pass that on their, like you take the exams at the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of that's different. But again, it's just like you're so close to it at that age where I feel like you understand, like, again, like Cliff is saying, like you have civics, you understand like the basis of how government is formed. There are a lot of people that understand like how government actually functions, who actually represents them, what powers like each of these, like each individual serves within like their local and federal government. So I'm not opposed to the voting age being 16 nor 17. I mean, again, like you're allowing 16-year-olds to get their driver's license. So why now should you have to come back in 2 years and then register to vote?
So they followed up in the comments. It said, yes, but that's why if it was 17, then everyone would be informed, technically speaking. But this is my objection to that. And this is why I've always said 16.
Mm-hmm.
If you say you can't vote until you reach the age of 17, to me, even 17 is too old for this reason. And maybe this is just me being selfish, but I was young in high school. I was in college at the age of 17. I graduated high school at 17. I was still 17 to start off in college. What that means is, let's imagine I'm a senior in high school, 17, but won't be 17 before the election.
Oh, okay.
That means I could go my entire time in college without having had the opportunity to cast a ballot. My entire time for who's in office, my entire time in college.
Yeah.
That's why I say 16, because at least if you can vote at 16, you get to participate in primaries or a general, and then you actually have a say. So the 4 years that you're spending in college, those folks are representative of your voice while you're engaged in the most important studies of your life. That's why I'm against. I appreciate the comment, but that's why I've been against 17. I think 16 needs to be the number. They're just as informed as 17, and they'll get to have their voice heard while they're in college. And I think that's important.
Right. And for clarification, you're saying not just primaries, you're talking about mid-year elections, because voting does take place.
Anyone 16 should be allowed to vote in any election, period.
Okay, got it. But I'm saying when you made the contrast about from high school all the way from college, you would have the opportunity to vote, but maybe not in a general election like a presidential.
But there would be people in office that you did not get to vote for while you're in college.
Yes and no. Yes.
No.
Yeah.
You're 17. They got elected while you were 17. You didn't vote. They're in office the whole time in college.
Right, but you still have the opportunity to vote these people out during.
No, you don't. Not if you're serving a 6-year term. You didn't get to vote for senator.
Excuse me, Mr. Government Civics teacher.
You're talking about the folks running for 2-year offices.
Yes.
Most people have senators have 6-year terms. Governors have 4-year terms. So you don't get to vote for governor. You don't get to vote for senator.
Okay, hold on.
You don't get to vote for president. They're in office the whole time you're in college.
Listen, because now you need to walk some stuff back. If in fact you don't vote at 7, if you don't get to vote at 16, 17, then you have to wait for the next election cycle. You still get to vote for local candidates. So I just don't want people only being hung up. Yeah, but the thing is that you still have a chance to vote.
But I don't want to belittle belittle national offices or local offices.
Right, but I'm just saying, but I want people to make sure, I don't want to confuse anybody here. So I'm just saying.
I think that's what you did.
No, Cliff, okay, we're going to just stop there and go to the next thing.
See? Well, I have to read it and then we go back to that last header. So the next proposition in California is Prop 25. This is a big one. Prop 25 asks, this measure asks voters to approve or reject a law passed by the legislature. The former governor before Gavin Newsom took over, his predecessor.
Say that again.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Headphone disconnected again. Give me one moment.
Okay.
But prop.
You're good. You're back.
All right.
I thought you were back.
We're gonna get this.
It's all right, guys.
I don't know why Do Not Disturb does not work on my phone.
Oh.
There we go. Yeah, because I got a phone call. So when I get a phone call, it disconnects the headset because I'm live.
Got it. Okay.
Sorry about that. All right. So Prop 25 asks voters to approve or reject a law passed by the legislature. In this case, it was a 2018 law abolishing cash bail in California. The legislation essentially eliminates the payment of money as a condition of release, awaiting hearings and trials. And the former Governor Brown was supportive of this, and essentially the argument that he made is that you shouldn't be sitting in jail simply because you're poor. And that's, to me, what the cash bail system does. I love hearing my seniors discuss this and argue whether or not they support it. And it's a tough one. I understand why it's a tough one. For me, it's not. But I'm curious of your thoughts and what do you think of the merits of the arguments against this proposition? The primary one being, or the primary two being that judges are now going to have a disparate, right? They're going to issue disparate rulings in terms of who has to pay, in terms of who gets released and who has to be held in jail while they're awaiting hearings and trials. But they at least won't have to pay cash bail if it is approved and this proposition passes.
But you said that judges still have, what was that?
Judges, the judges make the determination if this passes. I don't understand the comment. I want you to clarify.
Yeah.
You're in jail because you did something. I don't get it.
So, yeah. Okay, no. They might need to clarify. Shannon, what are you saying? Because he wrote this when you were reading about the ballot measures.
Oh, when I was reading the measures? Okay.
Yeah.
So I was curious what your thoughts are on opposition to passing it based on money, essentially, or based on potential bias of judges.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to answer this first before
Oh, you stated that people are sitting in jail because they're poor. Yeah, but rich people also did something, but they get to pay bail. They can afford to pay bail and they get out. So that's why they're sitting in jail. They are sitting in jail because they're poor. I mean, you can look back to the gentleman in New York who couldn't afford to pay his bail, and he was held for so long. I mean, he had been brutalized, he had been beaten, he had been sexually assaulted, he committed suicide, and he was actually not guilty. He wasn't responsible for what they alleged. So every person that's sitting in jail has not done something. I think that's a dangerous kind of broad swath to paint folks who have been in the system. And sometimes you're in the system through no fault of your own, but sometimes you have too much melanin and you encounter law enforcement. And I think that they're not in jail because they're poor. Yeah, I don't agree with that. I think a lot of people are in jail because they're poor. And a lot of people have encounters with police because they're in communities that are less advantaged. And as a result, they are heightened. There's more heightened police activity. That's kind of the reality.
So in terms, I guess just going back to the basics of why they have cash bail to begin with is to make sure that the defendant actually return. Well, I'm just saying, like, part of it, the incentive is to make sure that these individuals, they return to court for the hearing. But on the flip side of it is like what you're saying, and it being also, they're making money off of these people's. These
millions.
Yeah. And so I'm not opposed to the actual proposition, but one of the things I think where there should be reform is the percentage. The percentage that they acquire for the cash bails or bonds. Because a lot of times you do see this in certain communities, and then the offenses that that are brought against individuals.
Yeah.
The amount of money that they have to pay, and then, like you're saying, it's just sitting there pretty much waiting. And in fact, they possibly are innocent. So that's just, it's like I feel like this is one of the things that's part of a larger issue in terms of the criminal justice system. And California, they've done a really great job. I mean, California has been a model, I think, for the country in terms of
always have been. At the forefront.
They really have been a model, and so it will be interesting to see. I hope that people are really educated about the issue going into voting, because like you and I talked about this, like in my state today when I went to vote, there weren't any ballot measures, but I looked them up ahead of time. There will be some people, they show up there, they don't have a lot of awareness about what's on the ballot. And so for things like this that are very important, I just hope that the people are on the ground and they're doing the work to inform voters of like why this matters. Because the last thing I'll add in is that, you know, for some people, because it doesn't like touch them, like their communities, they haven't had to see they don't know what that looks like, or they don't know someone that's gone through that. It doesn't matter. And I'm not saying that, I mean, again, it's like we want people to be informed, because just because it might not have impacted you, it doesn't mean that it doesn't impact the next person, or that it's something that we shouldn't discuss.
I just realized, as folks join us on IG, they can't see the banners that we have on YouTube and Facebook.
Oh,
so we can probably like every so often. So if you're just joining us on IG, we're currently discussing possibly, should we end, the question that essentially that's posted is, should we end cash bail? And that's kind of a continuation from looking at different propositions around the country. We started off in California. Prop 25 is asking voters to approve or reject a law that was passed by the former governor and the legislature in 2018, which abolished cash bail in California. Senator Kamala Harris talked about this in the one and only vice presidential debate, and she's a staunch proponent of eliminating cash bail, and I am too. I'm curious what your thoughts are on the. Should I respond to this first? I don't think it's because people are poor. I think it's because judges have too much discretion when granting bond.
Yeah.
And so I was actually just about to address that.
And then he just added, so I think you need to reel in judges' powers. I agree.
So the only way to do that would be to create kind of universal. I think that creates kind of universal zero tolerance policies, which we already know that has a more adverse impact on communities of color. So I'm not worried about the potential for judges biases to impact whether or not someone gets released, because I think now that the responsibility falls on their shoulders. And there's going to be a larger kind of microscope on them, because we got to remember, judges already had discretion to determine what the bail was going to be. Obviously, they take advice from the state, but they get to determine what it was going to be regardless. So I think judges they're always going to have discretion in our legal system. But to me, this at least eliminates the disadvantage for poor people, because if I am unable to afford the bail that's set, regardless of the charges, I can sit in a jail cell for 18 months awaiting a hearing. And then I can sit for another up to 2 years awaiting trial. And to me, that's not what justice is. Because in that time, I've lost my family, I've lost my job, I've lost any hope of acquiring gainful employment. And if we're assuming that you're innocent until proven guilty, that to me would be the first step in actually showcasing people are innocent until proven guilty. That you eliminate this system that requires you to provide funding for a system that's trying to beat you down. There's been a lot of comments that pop up. I couldn't keep up with them.
Yeah. So he was just saying, true, but the biases make it subjective. And he said, make it objective. I don't think justice is subjective either.
Let me respond to the first part, because I won't remember all three. Sorry. The first part, judges already have discretion. And to me, I hate this idea of, until we fix things 100%, we can't be progressive and make decisions that are helpful. No, I say cash bail is problematic, eliminate cash bail, and then let's work on making the system more objective. But I don't think that we should keep cash bail as a structural reality until we eliminate the potential for lack of objectivity from judges. Does that make sense? I know I said it pretty wordy. I'll try to simplify.
Yeah. So in other words,
if judges have discretion,
mm-hmm.
they always have discretion.
Right.
We should eliminate cash bail and then make the system less subjective.
Okay.
It's going to
subjectivity
is going to exist. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't make good decisions because we're fearful of potential judges' biases having an impact.
Mm-hmm. So do you feel like with this, there should already be something else in place then before you're saying?
No, because legislatures don't work like that. It's an unrealistic expectation of non-bipartisan bodies. There's too much partisanship and there's too many ambitious lawmakers with professions at stake to assume that they can do things kind of whole cloth. No, you have to do things piecemeal. I'm not supportive of a piecemeal system, but understanding that that's the system in which we operate, you have to get things done in that system.
But okay, so he's saying, so how would you do that? Honestly, I feel as if there should already be something that's
by passing Prop 25. That's the first step. That's how I would do it.
Okay. So you're saying it's fine then to eliminate this, but then not have anything for it, like anything
to keep judges accountable? Well, the next thing to keep judges accountable is to be able to vote. You can vote judges out. I mean, I just voted for 3 judges on my ballot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? I mean, so to me, it's like, yeah, that what I would do first is pass Prop 25. What I would do second, if I don't like decisions that a judge has made, I'm going to vote for the other one next time.
Yeah. This is part of the reason why folks need to be paying attention.
All right. So let's move into...
Yeah. I just want to read the comment. He said, here in Indianapolis, they're appointed.
Yeah. That's why I got the hell up out of Indiana. No.
But true.
Yeah, but that's true too, partially, because they're appointed by individuals that were elected. So Arizona, which is in this year a battleground state, right? You have Mark Kelly, who's the husband of former Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords. He's an astronaut. He's been to the space center. He's dope. But it's funny I would say dope. That was unintentional. No pun intended. You'll see why I'm saying that. Arizona has on the ballot this year in 2020 Proposition 207, legalizing the recreational possession and use of marijuana. So, if that passes, I mean, this is pretty plain. I don't know. There's a whole lot of discussion here. They'll follow what Colorado and California and 10 other states have done. Oregon, I think Washington State. So, yeah, to me, there's not a whole lot of discussion here, but that's on the ballot in Arizona, and that's a battleground state. So I think more than likely, if we're thinking ideologically, I think if Mark Kelly's doing well in that state, Prop 207 is likely going to pass. If Martha McSally's doing well in that state, Prop 207 is probably going to be defeated.
Mm-hmm. I mean, well, I don't know much about the constituency there, but I wonder if, in fact, the measure could pass.
With a Republican getting elected?
Yeah, I wonder. Because so much has changed. I feel like so much has changed over the last, what year is this? It's 2020. But so much has changed, I think, from when President Obama came in 2008. I'm saying, because I remember, this was at the beginning of the wave of them trying to pass so many measures about legalizing marijuana. And I'm saying, I think a lot of attitudes about it have changed. So that's why I feel that voters would probably still pass that. They would probably pass that measure, but could possibly elect him. I mean, but could possibly not elect him.
Yeah.
I think it can go, honestly, I feel like it can go either way. I just don't feel as if it would be that I don't feel like people wouldn't vote for it if they're not voting for him. I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I do, but we'll see.
Yeah.
That might be a
But
wager.
Arizona, yeah, that might be one. But honestly, like Arizona that's a whole other like dynamic. Like people over there.
No, I spent a week there, and never again. Remember, that's the place that had Sheriff Joe Arpaio for 2 days.
Mm-hmm. I was just that state is very problematic. But
Florida has got Amendment 2 on the ballot this year, and what that does is increase the state minimum wage to $15 by the year 2026. It's crazy that we're so far behind some of our kind of European sisters and brothers. I mean, Switzerland just passed a minimum wage up to $25. Is that $25? They did this like last week. And it's like, man, that was nice.
What currency do they use?
No, it was translated into, because it was now this did the they translated into US dollars.
Jeez. Okay.
I mean, heck, if it was 25 euros, can you imagine how much money that would be? All right. The last one,
So I want to go. So I want to talk about that because when we're saying like they're going to increase the state minimum wage to $15, and again, this is by 2026. So hopefully people understand like what they do is when they say, "Oh, the minimum wage is going to go up," it's really like it goes up in increments each year. 20 cents. But we also have and it's like people need to also take into consideration cost of living. I mean, Florida right now I believe is it's pretty affordable. It's an affordable state to live in. However, you have a lot of people moving there, like retiring. And so that's the other thing that people have to think about. In a lot of these like big tourist cities, there's a lot of service work, like people that are like work in customer service. And so they're being
for minimum wage.
Yeah, minimum wage. And so it's just like, that's not really a living wage if you're only making like $10 an hour.
The exploitation of workers in this country is disgusting.
Yeah,
we've had the same federal minimum wage for over 12 years. Mm-hmm. I mean, in 2009, $7.25. Today, $7.25 federally. And it's just, inflation has risen over that time. Cost of living in every state has risen over that time.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense. Why? You would think that Congress would do this. It's like, I don't see how this could be a partisan. How is raising the minimum wage to accommodate a living wage partisan? Everyone needs to live. Everyone earns an income. Yeah. I don't understand how raising the minimum wage is partisan. And it's not done annually. You would think Congress, of all the things that they could disagree on, this is one that you should see 90% plus support for in both chambers. I'll never understand how raising the minimum wage is a partisan issue. But I mean, we live in a country where Black Lives Matter is a partisan issue. So what are you going to do?
Right. Yeah. And then on top of that, when people don't believe in affordable housing. So, I mean, the homelessness problem is, that the fact that that's out of control, that shows you where we stand in terms of actually wanting to afford opportunities to people.
$15 by 2026. That's 6 years from now, so it can be voted down again. Anyhow, it can be placed on another ballot before then. Yeah. But $15, that's not. Yeah. That's still not enough. They're acting like this is bold. I'm done.
But the thing is, well, hold on, Cliff, because the thing is like $15 in Florida is not the same like $15. Like minimum wage in California is $15. That's not enough for the cost of living in California. But what I'm saying is, it's like
in Miami or Broward County either.
Yeah, when you're thinking about, but at that point, then I feel like then that's when they should be taking up those measures like locally, like within in their areas and raising minimum wage.
No, I disagree. Is it more expensive to live in Dade and Broward County than it is in Wichita, Kansas? Sure. But to me, it's still a federal issue. Exploitation of labor is not a local issue, so it shouldn't be just handled at the local level, because we already see, just like Jim Crow, There's a reason that the segment of the Voting Rights Act had isolated a particular regional issue, because there were certain states that intentionally subjugated the vote. The same is true for exploiting laborers. And I think that for that reason, it is incumbent upon the federal government to intervene and say, we are going to support workers on a national level. I don't think it's local. I think it's a federal issue.
Yeah, that's a good point. We have a comment. It said, we have a comment on Facebook. It says, I think the two sides, I think the two sides are unwilling to agree on anything for the sake of agreement, no matter the topic. And no matter the topic.
That's interesting, because if we differ,
go ahead.
Local governments, it's easier to. It continues. If we differentiate between local governments, it's easier to maintain the exploitation.
Yeah, it's a good point. That's true.
That the first point, though, I'm gonna put this back up on the screen. I was asked today by a brilliant young student journalist. Said I give her a shout out. Torrin Huff up in Oregon. She did a great job. I'm excited to read the article when it's published. Asked about certain viral moments of the debate and why those moments stuck out more in voters' heads than policy discussions. And the only answer I could give is, that's where we are as a country. And so, I said I was going to steal the question, but I would give a shout out if I did. So I think that's something that we can consider in the future. It's like, who and what are we as a country if the moments that stick out are not policy discussions focused on COVID relief, which isn't going to pass, but a fly on the top of Mike Pence's head? I could care less about the fly. I care more about Mike Pence saying in a vice presidential debate that he supports the decision of the grand jury in Kentucky because he has no reason not to believe that they're going to do the right thing. Yeah, it must be nice to have that kind of privilege to never be oppressed by individuals in law enforcement in this system of injustice. Yeah, it's great. Those are the moments that stuck out more to me. And the last one, I'll just read it. We can move on to the next one. Oregon is voting on Measure 110. Decriminalizes possession of certain drugs and establishes a drug addiction treatment and recovery program funded by the state's marijuana tax revenue. They continue to amaze me and impress me with their creativity with creating legislation that's meant to help and support people. Love that state. All right. Oh.
What?
You probably want to skip to Supreme Court. We'll skip to Supreme Court. So, because the one before that was about the town halls, but we can.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
I guess we'll just. No, because I know we're getting ready to run out of time. You kind of already touched on it in terms of who was it? You said it was a local reporter that you had spoken to?
No, young student journalist.
A young student journalist. Okay. Yeah. But no, that's a great point that they brought up, because I do feel like the one thing that concerns me is when people are offended by where they're saying that, we're taking this moment of racial injustice as if this is just a moment. This has been something that people have been battling for over a century. This isn't just something that just happened this year all because you woke up and you had to see it in front of your face. But the fact that, I saw a lot of stuff on social media, or you have conversations with family members, or it's more so with family members, but having conversations with people and seeing stuff on social media where they're offended with how this is an issue that's being discussed throughout the debates or last week in the town hall. And I agree. Who are we if we can't have these conversations? Because again, it's how do we expect to move the country forward?
I don't think we do. Yeah. I think some people are fine with us staying in a different era.
And then even the whole segment last week during during Trump's town hall. They spent a lot of time talking about COVID, but the thing is that if in fact he really did have COVID, I really want to hear how did it change you, or what things will you do differently? But I mean, he's unwilling to admit that he was wrong. He's still playing politics about a vaccine that I'm not saying that I'm going to take, but again, it's just it's one of those things where he still isn't taking the issue seriously or have a path forward outside what recovery looks like. Because at this point, it looks like we're going to be wearing masks. We're going to continue to have these restrictions for well over a year. So
yeah. The only comment I had on the dueling town halls was a criticism of NBC. I think that they made the bad decision. I think they made an economic decision to have a town hall going simultaneously with Joe Biden's. I mean, they allowed Trump to manipulate them into kind of coddling his
ego.
Need for stroking his ego, but his need for that attention. And I think they did a disservice to the voters, and they should have scheduled it for a different day. But beyond that, Biden spoke at length and with significantly more depth on issues that matter than Trump did. I mean, there's really there's no way around that. And Trump, once again, although he finally somewhat denounced white supremacists, he got angry that he was even asked to do so, and then very quickly pivoted away.
Mm-hmm.
So what did we learn from those town halls? We didn't really learn anything. Are there any undecided voters? No. What we have are people who are embarrassed of the decision that they're going to make, and they're unwilling to share that publicly. There's no such thing as an undecided voter 14 days before the election. Stop fooling yourself and stop allowing yourself to be baited by these people. They're going to walk into a ballot box and do something that they know they shouldn't do, but they're not willing to tell you that they're going to do that. There are no more undecided voters. Yeah. Maybe in January, maybe in March, maybe in May, not in October. There's no undecided voters.
No, there really aren't. There really aren't. I mean, it's ridiculous.
You see this comment? Mm-hmm. I just recently realized that GOP stands for Grand Old Party. Of course, they're in a different era. Yeah, back when, if we heard Lindsey Graham last week, when he asked Amy Barrett if she'd like to return to the good old days of segregation.
Yeah.
Folks, if you're adjusting your sets, no, you heard me right. Mm-hmm. Lindsey Graham, the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, said to a Supreme Court nominee, "Do you want to return to the good old days of segregation?" It was not a sarcastic comment. He asked it plain-faced, acknowledging that he believes that the days of segregation were the good old days.
And he said that off cuff, because you know how I don't believe he was reading from.
That was not a prepared remark.
Yeah, it was exactly. I mean, goodness.
Otherwise, one of his staffers might have caught it.
Yeah, and or would have allowed it.
Or not. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, and the fact that people don't have a problem with that, or that we're not. Yeah. It's one of those things where it's like, oh, that, so in different settings, how we dismiss things, it's like, oh, they're just older. That's just something that they say. No more of that. No more of that. Because he clearly just told you where he stands. And the unfortunate part is he's one of the top members in the Republican Party. So he also now just spoke for the GOP. So if there was some path to try to separate themselves towards doing things different, no. And this past weekend, the president, just to kind of go away from the us towards the Supreme Court, but the president, he's gone after Senator Susan Collins. He went after another Republican senator from, I believe it's Nebraska. I cannot remember his name right now, but he went after Susan Collins because she actually is opposed to the vote this week for Amy Coney Barrett. And it's just like now there's this divide between Republicans and the president. Oh, okay, Senator Ben Sass from Nebraska. Thank you. And so it's like, so I don't know. Like, again, like I always tell Cliff, I am one of those people, I do not trust polling data, but I'm not telling people that they shouldn't go out and vote. But I'm just saying, like, don't get comfortable like looking at these numbers, because again, like the president now, he's like on a whole, like he's on a tirade, like just going after Republicans that have not actually sided with him, or they're not jumping on ship. And so the reports are saying, and articles that are going out is saying that there might really be an opportunity for the Democrats to have control over both houses, over both houses within Congress. So just want to put that out there, that quite possibly this could be a win, but it's very scary because this week we're supposed to have the vote. And Amy Coney Barrett could quite possibly be the next Supreme Court justice.
She will be.
Yeah,
she will be.
And
that's just the reality.
Yeah. And yeah, there's really not much else we can say there. I mean, they rushed the hearings. If people saw some, if you guys saw some of the rhetoric from last week, it was very telling about how it is that she will vote, even though she refused to say how she would land on certain legislation. But I think that the writing's there.
So we got this. This is the last topic for us. But if you've been following the news, you saw that in Baldwin Park, California, there was an official ballot collection drop box destroyed. A voter intentionally put in a burning newspaper in order to set the ballots inside ablaze, and was successful and destroyed countless ballots. And I think that says all we need to know about our republic. I was going to say a democracy, but I mean, so do we have a republic? But this is wild. I can't imagine that this could happen in England. I can't imagine that this could happen in France. I can't imagine that would happen in Canada, right? Like, so I can't imagine that. And for those on IG, you can't see it, but I just put up an image of the police crime tape around the ballot box that's clearly destroyed. And it's like, these things only happen in places that had fully functioning republics that seem to be on a trend towards more and more fascist, more and more fascistic. And that's who we are. We are the fascistic nature of our government should be alarming to a lot of people. This idea that the head of state, the commander in chief, the person occupying the highest office in the land, would refuse to agree to a peaceful transfer of power should he lose an election. That should be a red flag for everyone. We got a question. It said, do you agree that the only way I imagine he's referring to Trump, but I could be wrong.
He was.
Do you agree that the only way he can win is if he steals the election? No. I think that should Russia intervene, or should these voter suppression efforts continue, it'll be icing on the cake. But we got to remember, Trump is in office because he speaks for people that harbor racial animus. And I believe I would love to have been proven wrong, but I haven't been, and I'm not going to be for some time until this new generation of young voters really outnumbers everyone else. But we know we live in a country where folks who harbor racial animus dramatically outnumber folks who do not. So no, I don't think he needs to cheat to win. I think that would be icing on the cake. I mean, of the amount, it's not just, and people that realize when I say racial animus, you don't have to be a white supremacist to harbor racial animus.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a member of the Klan. You don't have to be a member of the Proud Boys. You don't have to be a member of, you don't have to be a member of these institutions. Can you hear me?
Yep. Yeah, I can.
Okay. You don't have to be a member of these institutions in order to harbor racial animus. So no, of course I don't think he needs to cheat to win, because I know where we live. I've grown up in this country. I've had a lot of highly racially charged, been in some highly racially charged situations. And I recognize that race is at the root of a lot of issues in this country, since it was the original sin that was never answered for.
So, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, I know you wanted to talk about some other voter suppression efforts from the Republicans across the country.
No. So I was just gonna say, like, to add to that, because then they followed up with voter intimidation or suppression, etc. So again, like, part of like voter intimidation is it goes alongside with what you're describing in terms of you don't have to be like that far, like to that extreme as a white supremacist or in one of these groups. It's just also like checking your privilege, right? Some of it's checking your privilege. And then honestly, it's like, where do some of these, like how you feel about certain things, like where does that come from? Because it actually might, I mean, a lot of times, like you sit here and you have conversations with people, it's already formed around racism.
Yeah.
It's like the decision you're making is just like, oh, why do you feel that way? And then when you listen to them, like the big one is immigration. And that's one of the things that we haven't talked a lot about this election. And I feel like if it weren't for COVID, that really would have been like one of the biggest things that they could have used during this election cycle. And it's unfortunate because I know a lot of people that are actually immigrants and that are dreamers. And so it's just like, that's one issue that hasn't been at the forefront because of COVID, but it's definitely used as a way to that, and among other issues are used like to intimidate people from voting.
All right, we got a comment.
Question here.
Yeah, question. Do you think there's a possibility of lowering the voting age anytime soon? I think this is a piggybacking off of our. Do you think there's a possibility of lowering the voting age anytime soon? I think that states might kind of follow California's lead and lower the voting age for folks to participate in primaries if they're going to be old enough. But no, I mean, across the country, we're not going to see what I think should happen, because the majority of younger voters are going to be voting Democratic, just like a lot of other voting demographics. That if they're just, the reason that DC doesn't have statehood is because it's full of people of color and they would be voting Democratic. If DC was had full of white people who were Republicans, they would have been a state 50 years ago. So no, I don't see the possibility of voting age lowering anytime. So, and
you know what? But watch it change though in the next few. I feel like now, because there's so many people. I mean, DC is made up of a lot. I mean, they pushed out a lot of the natives, like the people that grew up there. They pushed them out now to the suburbs, and so because a lot of the people that work in government live there, they're going to have an impact on that changing. I definitely could see that happening in the next few years.
And I can see this timer about to hit us.
Yeah.
Do a real sign off. Well, thank you for everyone who joined us. We see we got a little bit less people right now in IG, but thank you for those who joined us and stuck around with us. Thank you for everyone who joined on YouTube and Facebook. A bunch of good questions today. Come back next week. And also bring a friend on election day. We're going to share, Shonda and I are going to share the election maps, our map predictions. And throughout the night, we're going to jump on live and talk about states, things that are rolling in. We're going to have Grace back. We're going to have, and next week, we're going to have Lauren May, Kalora, and we're going to have Arushi Falke joining us on the show to, again, talk more election, talk feminism, talk Supreme Court Justice nominee who might be on the court by then, Amy Barrett. It's going to be good.
And the last debate.
And we'll be able to discuss the last debate, which is taking place in 2 days. It'll be a little better because they're going to mute the microphones apparently when the candidates are not answering questions directly. So we'll see if that improves the structure.
See y'all.
See ya.